We are igniting the blockchain. I am your host, Elizabeth. Join me and my guests as we talk about everything related to cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Nothing we say is legal advice or investment advice. Do your own research. Have fun and let's get started. Joining me today is Brian Herskowitz of the Crypto Film Fund. Brian is a filmmaker, writer, producer, and teacher of screenwriting. How did you become involved or interested in blockchain?
Well, I've been hearing about since Bitcoin blew up, I've been hearing about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and really had no clue what that meant. It sounded a little bit like smoke and mirrors to me. So as I had a previous business where we started to do a little investigation about what are these currencies, what does it mean? And it became really intriguing to me. And then I had met some people at a conference called Digital Hollywood. And they had mentioned that they had this crypto film fund that they were starting to develop and explained to me what the concept was. And it felt very much in line with my philosophy in terms of having a secure and transparent method of moving money from box office into the investor's hands. So that was one of the things that really I thought was different and intriguing about the idea of the blockchain and the cryptocurrency. So that's one of the reasons that I got involved.
The Crypto Film Fund will be built on a blockchain platform, and its purpose is not to fund big Hollywood studios, but more indie producers?
Absolutely. The focus is going to be the independent producer, the independent filmmaker. We will hopefully at some point get the notice of the studios and they'll come around and start saying, hey, can you raise money for us? That would be lovely. That's not the goal. The goal is really to help that person who's coming from St. Louis or from Miami or from Chicago who has the talent and the wherewithal, but not the access.
Okay, so that's the benefit, the access.
That's a huge benefit, and it's one of the benefits. Of course, there are many benefits. One is that as equity crowdfunding and the idea of fractionalizing ownership has come to fruition, that's another thing that's really democratizing the system. So you have somebody who's sitting in their living room in Pittsburgh and goes, hey, I really love those movies, and I would love to be a person who's taking advantage of Paranormal Activity, which was made for $15,000 and made $200 million worldwide. So there's a democratization of the investment that was not available to people before. The difference between doing the reward-based or equity crowdfunding is with the cryptocurrency, once things are tokenized, and we have the ability to tokenize, which we're kind of still waiting on with the government to catch up, but once that happens, you'll be able to take a coin and change it on the open market theory. So that brings a liquidity that didn't exist before.
I have a couple questions about that. First of all, this democratization, just to help me understand it a little bit more, that means that I and my friends and anybody else can take an interest in a project or in a group of projects and say, hey, you want to invest here, and we go to this platform and invest.
What it does is it allows those people who didn't have access to the investment, it brings in those people who have a small amount of money they want to invest instead of the industrial investor, the accredited investor who has big money that they want to invest. Traditionally, the model has been those people with the most money have the most opportunity to invest in the bigger projects. So, you don't hear about and you're not allowed to be an investor in a startup at the moment, the way that the system is set up, until we pass the equity crowdfunding laws. Now that democratization allows people who are sitting in their, like I said, in their basement going, okay, I've got a little bit of money, but I want to turn it into something, and this sounds like a great opportunity. What does change in terms of the return, there's no way to secure an investment in any risky project. If you put money into a restaurant, you put it into a movie, you put it into anything that has high risk, you're putting your money at risk. There are a couple of differences. One is that if it becomes tokenized, in theory, that token has an intrinsic value that would be exchangeable on a third-party exchange. Now, that assumes a few things. One, that there is a party that will take your particular token, and two, that there's a buyer. But if there is, then you have the ability to liquidate that token, which previously was totally at risk. That make sense?
That does make sense. Thank you for explaining it in such detail. Does the structure or the technology, the way blockchain works, contribute any benefit to this plan?
Of course. I'm not, I wish I was more of an expert on blockchain and cryptocurrency. I've come from the creative side of things, and it's still something that I'm learning about. But one of the things that happens is that there's a great security to the blockchain technology, which is a kind of as I understand it, it is a fractionalized ledger. In other words, when your information that you're putting into the world that says, this is my bank account, this is my wallet, which is traditionally what's used in the cryptocurrency world, that information is spread out through many different servers around the world. And it makes it very difficult to co-opt or to corrupt that particular process. And the other thing is it also makes it transparent, because you can actually see where the money's moving, how it's moving, and you can track it. And in the past, again, with the traditional method of filmmaking, you had to have a lot of trust. You were giving your money to someone and assuming that they weren't going to put in a new sprinkler system on their lawn. You had to trust that they were going to be using the money for what they were saying they were using it for. Now you can actually look and see, okay, the money went from here to here. It's being utilized for this. It's going to the box office. And eventually, once the theaters and the box office and other systems are online in blockchain, you'll be able to actually track money that goes into the box office, into a particular theater, and see how it comes out, and the water flow that goes from there into your pocket, instead of it having so many different places where an unscrupulous distributor, an unscrupulous filmmaker, an unscrupulous bank can take that money and hide how it came through and where it went.
So it sounds like it's not just giving more access, but it's actually decreasing the risk.
Yeah, I mean, our mantra is that we intend to increase transparency, security, and liquidity. And if we can do that for an investor, even by a little bit, we're increasing the bottom line for them and hopefully making the whole system more attractive to an investor.
And help me understand this. This means that when I put my investment into your fund, do I get to tag a project specifically, or am I putting it into a group?
Well, we're still in startup mode, so there are a couple of things that are on the table in terms of discussion, and we have landed on a system that will allow us to do both, so that you can come in and say, you know what, I don't want to take the risk of a single project. I'd like to be collateralized across a platform, across a slate, and that is generally considered a lower risk, because you have, if you have one project you're putting all your money in, if it hits, you're doing great. If it can't, if it doesn't, you've lost your money. So, if you feel lucky and you want to go into a specific project, yeah, we would take money into a specific project. Right now, the ability to tokenize those projects on a individual basis, we don't have that system in place yet, but we intend to, and that's the idea.
It does sound fun. I can't wait to see the whole roster of projects that you come up with. And that's another aspect that you'll be involved with, is vetting these projects.
Yeah, that's really one of my key duties, because I come from that side of the industry. I was a filmmaker, I was a writer, I was a producer, director. So, and I continue to do those activities as well. But yeah, so one of the things that is my job is to look at a project and say, not only is it well written, not only is it something that an actor would want to star in, but is it something that's commercially viable? And one of the other kind of mantra that we have is risk mitigation, and risk mitigation across the board for an investor. Because as my experience as an independent producer, filmmakers are passionate about their projects, but they're not necessarily intelligent about the business side, and they often want to get their film done at whatever cost it takes to the investor. They don't necessarily think about marketing. They don't necessarily think about how do I get the return on my investment. They don't necessarily think about, am I picking a project that's going to be commercially viable? And of course, that means different things to different people. So there are filmmakers like Henry Jaglom that does very small, very intimate films that he does in few cities, four walls, the theater, and he owns all the proceeds. If he makes $100,000 a year off of those films, he's perfectly happy. So it really, not everybody is looking for the, Avengers Endgame type of money. So we have to look at what type of film are we looking at? What is the likely return? What is the likely budget? How are we going to mitigate the risk for the investor? And there are a myriad of technologies and also just different ways that we can look at how do we protect the investor, including tax incentives, both local, state, and national, foreign incentives, using international sales and minimum guarantees that promise that you'll get a certain amount of money back from from theaters around the country, around the world. So we look at all the different ways of mitigating the risk for the investor. And again, one of the best ways of doing that is making sure you pick good projects and that you put a good team behind it.
You will evaluate those closely.
Closely.
So I am an independent filmmaker, screenwriter. Okay. I've got a project and I want to pitch it to you. How do I do that?
Well, right now you don't. When we're up and launched and when we actually have funds available, then we'll be looking at different avenues for people to come into the system. We will be looking at individuals who contact us. We'll absolutely be looking at that sort of system. We have to be a little bit careful for a couple of reasons. One is you can easily get overwhelmed because there's a lot more people that don't have representation, that don't have people that are the kind of the conduit to the industry than there are the people inside. So, and what you have to do is you have to filter out a lot of the noise. So we'll probably have a system that allows for films that have won major prizes in festivals that will be able to submit, or filmmakers that have won major festivals. And of course, the definition of major festival is also very, subjective. Does the Hoboken International Film Festival merit, or not? And that's something we have to evaluate as well.
Are you going to rely on your own personal connections, you and the group, to attract these people, both the investors and the creative producers, or are you going to market this some way?
Both. Initially, it'll be, friends and neighbors. It'll be the people that we know. It'll be the people that we trust. But then we absolutely, a big part of this is the ability to get out to the people that don't have that access and say to them, look, here's a way for you to enter the industry, come on board, get your project vetted, have it put onto a platform where it can be tokenized and people can invest in it directly. And that's really the goal. But that's going to be down the road a little bit. Again, one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to give false hope to people and say, hey, come to us, we'll get you money. Unless we have that ability, unless we can actually perform, we don't want people to come to us, give us a project and have it sit on a shelf because we're waiting for investments to come in. That doesn't mean that every project that comes to us is going to get, is going to finish their investment or even garner a penny. But it does mean that we want to be in a position to say, okay, we know we've proven the model. We know that we have projects that have been funded. We know how they've been funded. We know how we can market them, and then we can go off to the races.
How hands-on are you going to be in the creative process and the business management of these projects after they come in?
Individually, it's gonna begin with more oversight than not, and then over time, as we start to spread out into more projects, it'll become impossible to do that. So it'll be the bigger questions will be answered and will be vetted by the company in terms of things like, we will have a say on casting and we'll have a say on whether or not the director is viable, that sort of thing. We'll absolutely have some say in marketing and how the project will be marketed, but hopefully we'll be in a position where people will be looking to us for that expertise rather than it being someone saying, oh, I want to have it my way. We will be collaborative as well. I mean, I would never dictate to a filmmaker, you have to have this actor. I would never dictate to a filmmaker, you have to have this marketing. But I think a bright filmmaker will say, oh, okay, we're going to listen to you. Because we'll be coming from a position of how do we get you the biggest bang for the buck? How do we get you the best actor for that role? How do we get you the best marketing available? How do we make sure that it's targeted for the right audience?
Right. So you are going to bring your experience, your years of wisdom to
Yeah,
this.
that's it. That's the plan in any case. I'm certainly going to try. Yeah, we intend on being, as hands-on as we can be during the process without being intrusive. The one thing that, we're not a studio as of yet. We don't intend on becoming a studio as of yet. So we're not in the position where we're going to dictate every move. We want filmmakers to have their creativity and their ability to go off and create the project that they want to create. But in order to do that and still retain some semblance of mitigation of risk for the investor, there has to be some oversight, and there has to be some kind of thumb on the pulse of who are the actors that are going to be best for the role. Not necessarily the ones that are most famous or celebrities or known actors, but are they going to be the best actor for the role? Is it going to be better for it to be a theatrical release or to go directly to streaming services? Those decisions are big decisions, and those have to be made on a case-by-case basis.
Brian, this is a new project, and
Mm-hmm.
I wish you the best in it, but have I overlooked anything that I should ask you that you'd like to talk about?
Well, that's a good question. I can't think of too much. We're looking at a lot of different revenue streams for the company, but also looking at ideas that are going to help that independent filmmaker get their project out into the world and get it successful and get it funded. And a couple of items that we're looking at, one is a casting fund that allows people to come to us and say, if I can only get Tom Hanks to star in my film, I know that so-and-so would give me all the money I need. And we can say, okay, we'll put that money aside for you. You can show it to Tom. It'll go into an escrow account with his name on it. When you get all your money, you'll pay us back plus interest, but you'll be able to have Tom Hanks and you'll be able to go off and make your movie. That's a big sticking point for independent producers. One of the catch-22s of the industry is this kind of circular logic of, if I can get the right talent, I can get the money. And if I get the money, I can hire the right talent. So you get into this place where you can't break the log jam to get funded.
Kind of like an escrow then.
Yes, it'll go into an escrow account, and it'll turn into what's called a pay or play, which says that you're guaranteed to pay that actor after a certain point. Usually it's 30 days prior to production. And at that point, if something happens, you pull out, there's a penalty. So that's the only risk of that money. So it's smart money coming in, smart money coming out. It's a cash flow revenue source for the company, but it's also hugely important for the filmmaker. The other one that is equally as important that we intend to put together is a prints and advertising fund. At least in the old days, it used to be called prints and advertising because you made copies of your film and that would go off to the theaters. Now everything's digital, but they still call it prints and advertising. And that's the marketing money. And the reason that's crucially important is because a lot of filmmakers go off and they spend, their mothers and fathers and cousins hundreds of thousands of dollars to make their movie, and it maybe goes to a few festivals and then sits in somebody's closet. And the only way that you can secure that film is going to be given to the public is by having prints and advertising that allow you to, if nothing else, four-wall it at a theater and you get to keep all the proceeds. So prints and advertising becomes another very important part of the system that allows people to secure that there's going to be some return on their investment for their investors. And that's one other kind of alley and lane that we're creating for the independent filmmaker. Now, of course, this is all on theory right now. We're still working on all.
You're setting up a framework for success.
Yeah. That's the hope, obviously. One of the things, and this goes back to the idea of doing a slate versus investing in an individual film. The studios work on this model as well, which is they're going to do, 25 films a year. They're expecting 15 of them to really tank. They're expecting 5 of them to about break even, and they're expecting, the rest to make money, with 1 or 2 being a breakout hit that pays for everything. And that's kind of the roulette theory of investing. So that's one way to really mitigate the risk for an investor. With individual projects, it's a little bit harder and a little bit more hit and miss, but that's again why we want to look at mitigating the risk starting with the story. Is it a good story? Is it something that people are going to react to? Are they going to be intrigued by it? And is it going to find an audience?
And certainly with streaming as the distribution model now, the world is wide open.
Yeah, it's changed everything because you're no longer looking at are we getting seats into the theater? Are we getting people in? You're no longer looking at the ratings. They don't look at any of that really. What they're looking at is kind of an up and down graph of how many people are subscribing. So the interesting thing about the streaming services is they are less concerned with that individual project as they are with their bottom line. Having said that, you'll see that all the streaming services, even this new service Quibi, which is the short content service, they're all looking at who are the stars. Is Steven Spielberg willing to do a series? Can we get, Jennifer Lawrence in a series? That's what they're aiming for. And then they're also looking at films that are winning festivals, that are doing well in terms of that kind of award season, and they're acquiring them. They're doing acquisitions. So a lot of the films that you see that appear to be original films on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or even Disney, they're not necessarily created by those people. They are independent films that are being acquired by those studios and then branded.
Well, and some of them are pretty good.
A lot of them.
And so I hope that this model of funding and financing projects will really help bring more of that talent.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that it will. I think it's going to be kind of incumbent on us to be the arbiters of good taste and to say who's talented and who's not. And that's a hard thing to do. It's a difficult thing to do to people, and it's a difficult thing to do just in terms of the abstract, to decide whether a project as you read it on a page is something that can come to life and really attract people. But that's the game.
I'm totally fascinated with this whole project, this whole idea. If I had time in another life, I'd probably go write something just so I could be part of it.
Bring it on. We'll take it.
Yeah.
The other thing that we are going to be doing later on in the process is rights management, looking at kind of a blockchain technology for filmmakers to have because one of the other things that's obviously a big problem is theft of intellectual property, stealing your film and streaming it. And there are ways that you can help secure properties and projects like that through the blockchain. That's something I'm not quite up on exactly how that works. That's something I'm still studying. But, that's one of the other things. The rights management and smart contracts are also something that we're looking into very, very heavily and will be a part of our platform at some point. Probably not first out of the gate, but down the road, because we do think that that's another way that we can help, remove some of the cost and the middleman in terms of the smart contracts, and also save, who knows how much money from piracy and from intellectual property theft. So we're looking at that as well.
Well, certainly digital right management and intellectual property protection is one of the really well-known use cases and applications of blockchain technology.
I mean, we're in that space now in terms of we're doing the research. We have a company that's part of the FinTech World Group that is a trademark blockchain company, where if you have a trademark and you want to protect it, you can put it on our blockchain. And that's something that we're developing now, and that will come out about the time that Crypto Film Fund goes and launches fully.
Yeah, maybe we need to talk a little bit about that. That Crypto Film Fund is actually a project of a bigger company.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that one?
I need to kind of give a shout out both to Sydney Armani, who is the CEO of the FinTech World Group, and also Anne Schoblum, Anne is the CEO of Crypto Film Fund. And their concept, they're working on several kind of lateral groups of companies that go hand in hand with Crypto Film Fund. One is a blockchain-based real estate funding platform. Another is a crowdfunding platform called Crowdfunding USA, which will be launching very soon. And I think initially we'll be launching with reward-based, and focusing more on charity and charitable giving. And then we have another company that is this Blockchain TM, which is a trademark blockchain company that is a lockbox for your trademark and your intellectual property that way. And we may be able to use that as for scripts as well. We're investigating that. They actually have one on a stem cell technology company that's also one of their supporting. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. I think that's it right now. But there's the company's been around for about 8 years, and they've been doing seminars and consortiums around the country for a long time about financial technology, starting with crowdfunding back in 2012, I think it was, when the laws first came into vogue. And so they've been around for about 8 years, and they're very well established in PR and media. And now they're moving into this sector, and that's something that I'm very excited about.
It is exciting that they found so many different ways to incorporate blockchain into their fintech, into the projects. And I'm really excited to see where it goes.
As are we. For me, my focus, because I'm a filmmaker, I've been kind of given the Crypto Film Fund to guide. And it's really something that Anne is the CEO of the company, but she so far seems to trust me implicitly. And I've been kind of heading up, where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are the things that we're looking to do? And it's with any startup, it's a little bit of a living, breathing creature, and it changes day to day in terms of, focus. Sometimes the laws change suddenly on you, and you have to be prepared for just about any, different direction to go. And you also find that, you listen to people to try and take advice to help you guide where you're going to go. And sometimes you get different advice from different people that take you in totally different directions. And you have to decide, what is going to be the best path for my company. And this is a startup. We're right now we're in our seed round. We're actively looking for funding for the company itself. And one of the things that we hope to do with that is build the infrastructure. We already have the platform, but build the infrastructure for media and marketing, and to go ahead and produce our first project. And we have several that we're looking at for that.
If somebody were interested in helping in the fund, where would they get in touch with you?
They can reach us at cryptofilmfund.com, or they can reach out to me directly, which is Brian, Brian, at cryptofilmfund.com. And I'm pretty good about getting back to people. I will answer your email if you reach out to me.
A lot of people have a hard time entering into this space, and some of them are intimidated about learning it or understanding it. And I know that you have just recently decided to learn this. And could you talk just a little bit about that? Because I'm really impressed how far you've come. And then maybe you can reassure people that it is learnable.
And I'm still learning. I'm still, a lot of concepts are very difficult to wrap your head around. They, like I said earlier, you kind of think that, well, maybe it's smoke and mirrors. Maybe there's, how do you know, what is it? But, I started to look at it as an analogy to stocks and the stock exchange. Mm-hmm. And when you put money into a stock, you don't have a piece of McDonald's. You have a little certificate that tells you that you own McDonald's, and you trust that McDonald's is going to pay off that stock, and that when you want to sell it, you can go to the stock exchange, and there will be someone there who says, yeah, I think McDonald's is worth another $10 than it was yesterday. I'll give you that. So in a way, it's a similar, kind of form of currency. It's a similar idea that it represents something. It is not something. So that was kind of where I started with it. And then as I started to understand the fractionalization, the idea that there's a way of putting a little piece of data on different platforms around the world and different servers around the world that protects the whole, that also started to make sense to me. And like I said, I'm still absolutely trying to wrap my head around a lot of it. And one of the things that helped me is and strangely enough, FinTech World had put on several different consortiums. One was done in New York just before the virus hit, and I was a speaker there for Crypto Film Fund, but learned an incredible amount just listening to people talk about their blockchain technology, their view of the future. Where are we now and where are we going to be? I had, at that point, I was talking about, we're going to tokenize, or we're going to make a coin for this, we're going to make a coin for that. And then somebody very intelligently said, you can't do that right now. And I went, oh, okay. What do you mean? Well, the government hasn't allowed that yet. So you can do a security token offering. And I went, okay, that's what we're doing, a security token offering. So those are the kind of things that kind of, at first were overwhelming, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around, but there are tons and tons of these kind of consortiums, different kind of seminars and conferences, many of which now, because of the lockdown, are free. There's a ton of information on the internet. I kind of went and did a Google search of cryptocurrencies for dummies kind of a thing. There's a terrific documentary I watched, which is about really the founding of the idea and concept of blockchain and Bitcoin. There's a Japanese man that is credited with creating the concept, but nobody knew who he was. They couldn't find him. And it's really a fascinating documentary. I think it was on Netflix. So you can find a lot of information from that, because that really talked about what was the concept, how did it come about, who were the early adapters, and what were they talking about. And of course, one of the things that we're finding as we're moving forward is, what were the errors that people made? Where were people being either dubious or dishonest, and how can you guard against that? So the protections that are coming in place now, and the things that people are learning about the problems that people have had in the past, where the fraud was, if there was fraud, all of those things. And I think that once it's all straightened out, this is going to be a much more secure technology than stocks or fiat or having your money sitting in a bank that can be robbed. And I think that they're going to find a lot of people are going to be adopting that. I know that one of the things that I found in my research is that there are countries like Sweden that are going entirely digital. There are places that, don't accept fiat cash, that literally you walk in and if you don't have a card, you're not getting anything. So that sort of thing is changing the landscape of finance, landscape of currency at its base. And I think a lot of that is going to be backed by and supported by the security of blockchain. So that's how I started learning. I just literally kind of did a deep dive and started looking at stuff. And I'm looking for that cryptocurrencies for dummies type of information that I can glean and get in, and then just going to the different seminars and talking to people.
Well, I'm glad that you discovered it, and I'm glad that you caught the bug like so many of us have done. One of the things you mentioned was the online resources, and we do have an incredible community of contributors. It's a decentralized community, largely, of people of all kinds of backgrounds all over the world, and it's certainly a welcoming place for anyone. So Google's your friend, jump in and take that deep dive. Well, Brian, it's been very, very nice talking to you. I wish you the very best success in your crypto fund adventure, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
I'm available. Let me know.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Check out ignitingtheblockchain.com for materials referenced during this podcast and for a list of other conversations about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. See you around the block.